we will make sure that we give 45 minutes to this. And for anybody who's watching for the first time, this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the board about issues of concern. They can either be on the agenda today or other issues that we need to know about. And at the end of that, I'll ask the general manager if there's any opportunities to comment on any of the things that were brought up during the public forum to help folks understand where things might be, and also to refer anybody to the right agency, because we often get requests that really we have no jurisdiction over. We limit the testimony to 3 minutes, and I actually have a timer that I set up on my phone so we know how quickly we're going through. This is an opportunity to make sure everybody can speak during the 45 minutes. If not, we'll have to stop it. I would point out that we do require or do accept written testimony also, and I would note that for the record or anybody listening, I think that Kimberly sent us about 12 comments that we'd received through emails. Probably about 8 or 9 of those were from Amalgamated Transit Union members concerned about the apprenticeship program, concerned about some of the labor negotiations going on. I'll ask the general manager to kind of give us a quick update of where we are on that process at the end of the forum. So with that, unless the board has any further comments before we get going, I'm going to ask Jeff to find the first person who raised their hand, and let's get this started.
All right, great. So we do have a hand raised already, and I will call on them. I just want to give a quick reminder to anyone who is called in on the phone only, so they can't see the screen we have up. If you would like to raise your hand, please dial *3 on your keypad. And with that, I will go to our first person, and that is that's Douglas Allen. Douglas, I'm unmuting your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Chair Warner, directors, and General Manager Kelsey, my name is Doug Allen. I'm speaking today about the letter sent to you by AORTA, Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates, regarding the Red Line Extension project. First, I want to emphasize that I have great respect for General Manager Doug Kelsey's interest in increasing TriMet's mode share of trips in this region to a more respectable level. A necessity both to fight climate change and to provide mobility in our increasingly dense urban space while reducing the need for more space devoted to roads and parking. However, to achieve that goal, TriMet must move beyond a system that serves predominantly single-seat rides to one that serves a larger share of the origin-destination pairs for the trips that people want to make. A transit system can only do that by facilitating transfers, both by physical design and by providing more frequent service over a longer span of the day. The Gateway Transit Center is nothing if not a place to transfer, including from private autos to transit. It is, however, a desolate, unfriendly location, especially in winter. The Red Line project does not help Gateway to serve its purpose better when it makes transfers more difficult for passengers coming from the airport and prevents TriMet from increasing max service south and east of Gateway. Over in Washington County, the Red Line project doesn't even extend added service to the Hillsborough Transit Center, whereas better service should continue to Hatfield Center Station. I'm sorry that TriMet has not done a better job of exploring the equity issues involved in this project. I expect that the general public assumes that this is the only alternative for solving the max reliability problem. After investigating the issue, it appears there are cheaper, better solutions that also solve the reliability problem, but the image of a hypothetical Intel employee going to PDX has commandeered the thinking. Please consider the issues raised in the AORTA letter and ask staff whether this project can be redesigned to deal with those issues while still solving the reliability issue. Don't consider this as the current design versus nothing. Ask for something better. And could I point out that the budget for this project is even bigger than the Division Transit project, which had a steering committee, community advisory committee, numerous public outreach opportunities, whereas the Red Line project, I think, has failed in that respect to look at the equity issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, for your comments. I'll look forward to reading your letter. I don't think we have that one yet, but I will make sure we get that to everybody. So thank you. Jeff, you want to go to the next speaker?
Okay, we do not have any other hands raised at this time. So I'll just remind people you can find that inside your participant panel in the WebEx window. There's a little hand icon, or if you're on a phone only, you can dial *3.
Thank you. We'll wait for a little bit here and see if anybody raises their hands. I know this format does inhibit sometimes the ability to participate in this, but thank you for your patience and your willingness to participate. It is appreciated. I'm not seeing any others on my screen, Jeff.
No others yet.
Mr. General Manager, I will still ask you at the end of this to give us a quick kind of update of the schedule and where you are in negotiations, if that's okay.
Happy to do so. I can include that as in the general manager report to start off with, if that works for you.
That works. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I'm still seeing none. Unless you have something, Jeff, I'm going to close the public forum.
No hands have gone up.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to close the public forum and move right into our regular agenda. So what I'm going to do is call the regular meeting agenda for September 23rd, 2020 to order. And the first items on the agenda, I'm trying to get back to my agenda here, is the board reports. Oh, here we go. We got to write it right up. If you go to the next page, right, the first item is the board reports. And so I'm going to ask Director Bauman to give us a quick report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So the CAT has switched over to monthly meetings. They hold short monthly meetings instead of meeting every other month. So here's a quick report on the most recent meeting. It took place last week on September 16th. Sam Dessou, the TriMet Chief Operating Officer, attended, and he provided several updates, including on completion of the Steel Bridge project and the change to the collection of cash fares beginning October 1st. He also importantly thanked TriMet Lift and First Transit staff for their work during the wildfires. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this, but staff significantly transported vulnerable individuals who were subject to evacuation orders in Clackamas County. And so we want to recognize their efforts. Marla Blagg, the Executive Director of Safety and Security, discussed ongoing initiatives around safety and policing. Transit Police Lieutenant Brett Laser, he described some preparations and planning for changes when Portland Police Bureau stops participating in the transit police. And finally, there was a report on Lyft operations, and they included that Lyft ridership dropped by an additional 10% during the recent air quality emergency, and that's on top of the ridership decreases that have taken place during the pandemic. And that is the report.
Well, that reduction in ridership is amazing. That's got to put some people in, people are not making it to some of the required medical trips and other things, it sounds like to me. Was that discussed in the committee, Lori?
Well, certainly the ongoing reductions in Lyft ridership generally, but at the start of the pandemic, there was a tremendous drop. I think it was on the order of 80% in ridership. But the good news is, and we've reported this in the past, that that Lyft took on delivering groceries to Lyft customers so that they wouldn't have to leave their homes for grocery shopping. So that, as I understand it, that's still continuing, and that's really been an important use of those resources.
Good. I see Doug raising his thumb, so that indicates they're still doing it. So thank you. Is there any questions by the board members for Director Bauman? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I think you've completed your report. Thank you, Director Bauman. I'll move on then to the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Stovall, we just had that meeting this morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we had 4 key issues on the Finance and Audit Committee report this morning, and the very first issue is the Moss Adams fiscal year 2020 audit report, which the board will be receiving this morning, also under the general manager's comments. And so I'll hold off on that until that point, so they'll give us their full report of what we heard. We just got the kind of the preview so that the Finance and Audit Committee can do their lean into that conversation as usual. The next item is the payroll tax update, and that will be coming ultimately up also for additional information for the board, kind of looking at the additional look at what the payroll tax will bring in the future, and ensuring that we keep on pace to ensure that our revenues are exactly where we need them to be to support our ridership within the region. Next up was the TriMet grant applications. Of course, we do grant applications every year for various things, and so we got it just for quick review of the grant applications that we're looking at this year, just as a kind of an informational item. Lastly, we covered kind of the updated schedule and some of the cost estimates for the Southwest Corridor line, and got an update there. I wouldn't say that there were too many things that have adjusted or changed over the course of the last few months. Of course, there's always potentially going to be some cost pressures on the upside, and they're based on COVID and some of the situations that we have there. There are some issues that has pushed part of the schedule out just a little ways. We still are going to have information, as we need it to keep on track, but we were looking for a cost estimate, kind of an ongoing cost estimate update back in July, and we won't receive that until probably, I think, the next week. So just a little bit of the shift, but that is certainly understandable based on kind of where we are in the whole COVID situation. So those were the 4 key items we covered in the Finance and Audit Committee this morning. Again, the Moss Adams report will be shared in its entirety during the general manager's comments. Any questions about Finance and Audit? Both President Warner and Director Simmons are also members of that, so if I missed anything, please feel free to add.
I think you did a great job, Director Stovall, but I bet there might be some questions by the board or comments. I'm seeing none. I guess I wanted to point out, I think Dee, our finance administrator, also indicated that the rating agencies have again affirmed our exceptional bond rating, which is really good, especially if we get into having to finance and deal with the Southwest Corridor project after the voters approve it in November. All right. Anything else?
Good point.
Anything else, Director Stovall?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right. Well, let's move on then to the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, MPAC as we call it. Director Way.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I don't believe there was a meeting that happened on September 9th, and if there was, I wasn't able to attend. We live in Clackamas County, and I believe that was the week that lots of families, some neighbors, friends that I know of were getting evacuated. So please continue to support our county as well as so many other counties that have been affected directly by the wildfires. There is an MPAC meeting that is happening today, the 23rd from 5 to 7, and I do plan on attending that one, and it's a virtual meeting. So I will have it, I will have an MPAC update for the October meeting.
All right, thank you. And I hope your friends and family are back into their homes now.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's move on then to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, TEAC as we call it. Director Gonzalez. I thought I saw him. Director Gonzalez, are you ready to provide us a report on a TAC committee? We're not hearing you.
His mic is unmuted, so it could be an issue with the input source.
Is that working? Can you hear me now?
There you go. We got you. We can hear you now.
Yeah, I had to change my input source. Oddly enough, the mic wasn't operating. Well, we did meet in September. We had an opportunity to go into an update from the focus group process with the Public Safety Committee and DHM Research, the consultant who's been brought on board for the community engagement process as the committees being formed, what used to be called the Blue Ribbon Committee. It's a public safety, I believe it's called a Public Safety Committee. I'm not sure. I know our general manager, Doug Kelsey, will be speaking on this because it's a very active process now. During the TAC meeting, it was mostly an update about the community engagement process. TAC had an opportunity to provide their own input on reimagining public safety efforts, and some of the great insight that came out through the meeting was the importance of having those key constituent groups provide some input at this early stage with regards to the formation of the body and potentially having some ongoing presence. But that includes low-income fare participants, Writers Club, as well as TAC and CAT, the Committee on Accessible Transportation, pardon me. So those are opportunities for continuing to provide further feedback. It was interesting to have in the report some of the themes that started to come out from the feedback that was already coming through in the community engagement process. So that was a really spirited conversation. TAC provided some really wonderful feedback, and it's going to be a conversation that will be evolving here very quickly. In October, I believe the meetings are beginning, and I won't steal Doug's thunder in any of the further updates around that. And frankly, that's about the edge of my knowledge with regards to it. So it was a really, really interesting conversation, and there's a lot of interest in exactly what sort of outcomes we should be expecting out of this process.
Good, thank you. Questions or comments by the board for Director Gonzalez? I see Director Wade, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to still figure out the whole raising the hand feature, but Dr. Gonzalez, thank you so much for the report. I'm just curious if you're hearing from community members around the timeline piece. I know that this is a project that is taking off, which is really exciting. I'm just curious if you're hearing any feedback or concerns around timeline being short or long, or does it feel just right for community members to give their input?
Interesting. Frankly, I did not hear much about the timeline itself, since this is a process that's beginning. I think most of the interest was around clarity about what to expect from the process. I think there was an interest in getting the process began right away. As far as timing, that was my sense. And really a lot was about a clear understanding that some change was needed, and a clear understanding that the funding that was allocated, the 1.8 million that was allocated towards this, is to shift priorities, but it doesn't mean it's not the whole investment, so to speak. It's really the initial process of an investment. So there was a lot of interest about what what that initial investment really meant as far as how it would impact the bigger pool of resources.
Okay, thank you.
And you got the hand raising down, Director Way. You got to figure out. Oh, there it is. Yep, good. You got it. You got it figured out. Other questions for Director Gonzalez? I'm not seeing any more. So then I'll move on to the final board report, which is mine, which is about the general manager's performance evaluation. And this is a little bit unusual because in the board report, we usually don't have action items, but this is an item after I'm done and the board discusses it. I hope that we can have a motion to approve the general manager's performance evaluation. And my recommendations in terms of changes, adjustments that we need to look at for the next few months before his contract expires next year. So very quickly, for anybody listening, the document is online, so you can go on and look at this evaluation. This is a performance evaluation for the period between July 1st, 2019 and August 31st, 2020. And again, COVID got in the way of kind of getting all of this done by the end of the fiscal year, which is usually what we like to do. But this is an opportunity for the board to review the performance of the general manager. First thing we do is we really gauge his performance based on his ability and completion of a work plan that we, the board and general manager, agreed to a little over a year ago, which puts forward the major policy issues and objectives that we think are important for the agency. And we are going to be working on a new one for after we're done with this review for to gauge its performance in the next year. But what I wanted everybody to know, anybody that looks at this review will find out that overall, I think the board believes that Doug's performance as a general manager for TriMet continues to be impressive. And overall, Doug has met or exceeded the board's expectations for most of the major business objectives and deliverables on that plan and more. And what I think just cannot state enough is under Doug's leadership, TriMet has made significant progress in a number of areas. I would just very quickly run through, in terms of on our safety, security, and equity programs, Doug and his staff did a great job of stepping up to look at how to reimagine our transit safety and security and equity programs. That effort is underway, and we hope to hear from that about the end of the year, where we ought to look at changing our programs to again address some of the concerns that are out there in the community, but also ensure our systems are safe and secure. I want to compliment Doug and his staff's performance in the areas of decriminalizing fare evasion, violations, reductions in fines, and options other than fine payments. And again, reduction of the use of armed transit police to perform fare inspections. So there's a lot done, and we expect more done as this review continues on. I would point out that we also believe Doug has done a good job of continuing to work on the customer experience and increase ridership. I think COVID got in the way of the ridership expansions that we were seeing, unlike many of the other agencies throughout the United States. We just want to note that Doug and his staff have been doing a lot to improve service, like the Division Street Transit Project, the Southwest Corridor, the Red Line you heard a little bit about, and maybe we can get an update on that a bit later. And then I would also point out that Doug has done a lot to improve our internal business practices. And this gets back to things like, again, just on-time performance of the system, measuring it. We've made great strides in those areas. I think Doug and his staff are to be congratulated on what I've always thought was a much less contentious contract negotiation with the Amalgamated Transit Union. I think we heard some concerns this morning, but I think that's probably where we are in a process, Doug. We're right. I believe we're in mediation, and soon we'll be in arbitration. Give us an update on that. But the board does appreciate Doug's outreach and interactions with the ATU leadership. And we know there will be some acrimony as negotiations move from the table to formal arbitration. But I think this is an area where I know a couple board members would like us to continue to have a priority next year, Doug. So that'll be something we identify for the next fiscal year as well. I would also point out that in terms of just other things done, in terms of Doug's leadership, TriMet continues to be a leader, and it's just really outlined its continued commitment to diversity and equity. I look at the Division Street Transit project, where we worked for a long time with a disadvantaged business enterprise, which is now Raymore Construction, who was awarded the largest DBE contract in Oregon's history for the Division Street Transit project. I also thought it was important to note Doug's ideas about how we can maybe look at rebuilding existing TriMet old buses from diesel to electric power. And I see our first prototype is rolling off, and we'll hear a little bit about that, I hope, in the next few months. And I just have to, in this document, we need to acknowledge the agency's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the things that we've done. I think we addressed it head on, feel very good about this. So again, I think Doug's knowledge skills have just provided new ideas and changes that continue to verify our choice to appoint him as our general manager. And Doug, your ability to be flexible and adaptive to unforeseen events in the past 6 months have been exceptional. So I want to thank you for that. And then finally, I just want to say that I've been working with Doug, and I think the board and Doug feel that we should defer any general manager salary changes until next calendar year. Doug's contract does expire, I think, in the second quarter of next calendar year, so we could have an opportunity to address that. I think the board that I've talked with most of you, and everybody believes the general manager should be at the midpoint of the salary range. And we can address that when we get into the new employment contract. But I did want to point out that during this process, I learned that the general manager's vacation accrual is less than that for those who report to him. So I think we need to adjust his vacation days up to 5 additional days, and I want to do it retroactively from the beginning of the contract. So that's what you see in this. I do want to point out that Linda Simmons and I collaborated on putting this review together, and I appreciate the comments and suggestions I got from all the board members on this. So I've talked too much. What I want to do now is give each board member an opportunity to talk about the review and maybe talk about Doug's performance before I ask for a motion to approve this. So if you want, I can just call on you, but if you want to just unmute yourselves and start talking, that's fine too.
I'll go ahead and go first, if that's okay.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I support the evaluation and the findings and the recommendation of course, for the vacation days. I want to say it's, many times, as we do evaluations and we look at things, we sometimes tend to evaluate on kind of the highest and best performance, and not always appreciate that when things run smooth, that's also the hallmark of a great manager and someone who's a great leader. And we've got so many great things, from the audit to our performance on our state types of attitudinal reviews. All of those things really point towards an agency that's running well. And one of the things that's impressed me thoroughly is that throughout this pandemic, and I know that's more so in this current fiscal year or this current calendar year, going through the pandemic, many times we, a lot of organizations, especially one of our size, can be slow to make the adjustments and the needed things to ensure both our operators and our teams are safe. We're responding to what the general public needs. And TriMet, in my opinion, has been on top of the issues. We may not do all things perfectly, and that's the hallmark of working with an immense number of writers and people and stakeholders to balance all of the things. And that's the true thing, is the balance. And many times we can say, well, it didn't go right in this exact area or solution or execution of this idea, but in the totality of what we're looking at, I am very impressed with Doug's leadership and the team we have assembled to continue to execute on the items and things that we need to move forward and make sure we're getting done. So I absolutely support the evaluation and the recommendation.
Thank you, Director Solo.
I'll follow Travis. This is
All right.
Linda Simmons. You know, I can't add very much to what Travis said other than to echo his sentiments. You know, an organization as large and complex as TriMet, it really bodes well at how well it functions, and that is in direct result of the leadership that Doug provides. And I'm always in awe of the number of initiatives and how responsive the agency is to unanticipated issues that present itself. So kudos to you, Doug, and the rest of the team. I won't take any more time, but Travis really covered it all. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Keith Edwards has raised his hand dutifully, so I'm going to let him go next.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate that. I would agree that the overall report is stellar. I think Doug has done a really good job in the business sense of keeping our organization above water and floating in a responsible way. I think that the like I say, the business side of it has gone very well, and it looks very good going forward, and that's in no small way. In no small way does that speak to what Doug has done, especially during this pandemic and all the things that go along with that. There's when you think of the pandemic, you think of just the overall effect of what happened with the folks that are impacted by it, by having to wear masks and having the spacing and all of that. But there's other nuances that really that have to be considered as well. And I think Doug has done a very good job in managing that and managing in a respectful way. I do have some concerns though in regards to one of my major issues is the relationship between ATU and TriMet management, the labor management relationship. That concerns me greatly. I do know that the apprenticeship was a very contentious issue. That was an issue that was very near and dear to ATU. And however, I think TriMet approached it strictly from a business sense and not from a sense of consideration of moving forward. There was an option to at least offer to the ATU to pay for half of it. And that option wasn't even presented to the labor side. I think that there's been an effort to work and try to have focus groups between labor and management to try to build a relationship that's a working relationship that's not so that's less contentious and certainly less adversarial. But I think that in doing that, there has to be some kind of work together. The Coraggio group, I looked at them online. The Coraggio group, their strength is not building relationships between labor and management. That's not what they do. And so I would think that going forward, there'd be a meeting of the minds with ATU and say, let's look at this together. Let's see if we can find a group we can both agree on that can help build our relationships going down the road. And that's not going to happen in a year. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It's going to take some time to make that happen. But as a board member, it's my responsibility to make sure that the public is their concerns are being met as well. And I think the public is more concerned about having good relationships between labor and management that aren't costing the public more money, and making sure that that everyone is getting along and working well together. The social environment, I think, needs to be worked on as well. But we'll talk about that, at a future date. But overall, like I say, I do agree that, Doug has done a very good job. And as Lori said, I'm sorry, as Linda said, there's so many moving parts, that you have to take into consideration. And that's very challenging because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that TriMet is a functioning entity that works well and has built for the future, so that it's, when pandemics come along or other unforeseen challenges come along, that TriMet will be able to withstand those challenges. And so I think, like I say, General Manager has done a great job. But at the same time, there are a couple of areas that need that need more attention and more focus, because they are just as important as the business side of it, in my opinion.
Thank you, Director Edwards. And for the rest of the board, you should know that Director Edwards and I have chatted about this a bit, and I think this is a great opportunity to get some things into next year's work program to address the work that you started, Doug, this year, but again, continue to work on improving ATU and management relationships. And then in terms of just, I think the other issue that you mentioned, Director Edwards, is the kind of the cultural competency and implicit bias. I think you want to make sure we're best we can be, and I think you're right in both of those areas. That this is a journey, and I think this is a good one to get on our next year's work program. So after we're done with this performance evaluation for this year, I want to come back with a document, and with some help from you, Director Edwards, we can come up with a plan and program that helps us move forward in all those areas. Other board
Very
members?
much.
Oh, you bet. Director Baumann, do you have any comments?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. I just real briefly want to state my strong support for the performance evaluation and recommendations, and echo my support for Bruce's comments and Travis's. And I also wanted to kind of call out some of the challenges we're having right now with the COVID and then the recent wildfire issues that have really tested so many of our institutions and businesses. And I've just really appreciated that Doug has been very thoughtful and acting quickly, but not precipitously in response, but really with the focus on safety, operator and customer safety, retaining public confidence in public transportation, and preserving the financial viability of the organization. So those, I think that what we've seen over the past few months has really been a good indication of the quality of leadership that Doug has provided. That's it.
Thank you. Director Way, I see you have your hand raised. Thank you.
Yes, great, thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo what Director Edwards has also said around the labor relationships. I feel like, protecting our workforce, making sure that they feel heard, making sure that these relationships get stronger over time are definite priorities for me as a board member that I take into consideration. And with the recent wildfires, it's no exception. I saw some of the comments that were submitted around our bus operators literally rescuing people from the wildfires, and they themselves not having perhaps the proper equipment or the proper protection. And that really, I feel, speaks a lot to the continued work, and some struggles that we have to continue to do as a board and as a leadership. And I think overall, Doug has done a great job this year, given managing a pandemic, managing, all of the organized efforts around George Floyd. I felt like Doug has had to be really flexible and also, I think, pretty responsive to what some of the community demands were, particularly around policing and transit safety. So I do appreciate his ability to pivot and to put in the required resources, and equity team, John's work, and really, I think, trying to navigate those conversations. So kudos to Doug, and I agree. I think that right now in this, just in 2020 in general, all of our leaders are just feeling really stretched in their capacity. Doug, I'm sure, is no exception. So I also would support him taking some time off, so that hopefully he can ground himself, center himself in this work. And I think my just last closing comment would be just around, the type of agency that TriMet wants to become 10, 20 years from now. And I believe that we need to continue to challenge each other around, old systems or old things that may have not worked equitably for all communities, and try to push us forward towards what's going to help people of Oregon 20, 30 years from now. So I think we have a great team, and thank you again, Doug, for your leadership and your flexibility during this year.
Thank you, Director Way. I see Director Gonzalez has his hand up now.
Yes, I do. And I think the mic works.
It does.
Oh, good. So thank you for the opportunity to speak individually, Director Warner, or President Warner, pardon me. We all reviewed the evaluation. I'll start by saying I think the performance evaluation I think does represent the place where Doug's progress has been, and I think that the findings are I support. While I do recognize they are I think more conservative than is representative of the challenges. And I'll put it this way: in one of the more challenging years, where clearly the agency has had to work the hardest, where I think the job has required has demanded the most, it's unfortunate to have to say that we're deferring any sort of compensation, but I think that reflecting the interest in adjusting the time off, that is really an important message about the importance of balance and work life. And I echo Director Y's comments about the need to take some R&R time. And I say that because in overall the performance, it's what has been controllable from an operations standpoint. What we have been able to plan has by and large demonstrated very strong competencies in the ability to manage this large organization. The planned expansions, the procurement process for these planned expansions, the service expansions that stem from a multi-year strategic plan, I think have demonstrated the ability to really move the needle on some of these major projects. And you've done some very, very strong things. And with what is not controllable, COVID, the protests that had major disruptions to the city's function or the region's function, you've demonstrated great agility and the ability to be proactive. So I really commend you for being able to demonstrate what is clearly in uncertain times, that tenacity to solve a problem, to get it right, to not just wait for the mandate to tell you exactly what to do, but to reach out into the industry and to find what else we might be able to do to position the agency to be a reliable resource for the public. So I think that that's really great. And on top of it all, at a time when we're seeing such disaccord and dysfunction, frankly, between agencies at multiple levels, from federal, state, municipal, regional, there's a lot of static. You've managed to maintain a regional agency functioning, and I'd say by and large kept it above the politics, frankly. I know that there's room for improvement, and to that end, I want to end by just acknowledging some of the places I see for areas where I think we can really dive in and strengthen. From my perspective, for what it's worth, I'd like to recommend that in trying to balance the safety and security need of the agency with promoting the responsible use of the system and delivering it in a way that's equitable and inclusive to all peoples. This is a really tough balance to strike. So between serving the public, serving the employees, and serving the agency, I think it's serving the public that trumps all of the other priorities. It's why we as board members step forward in this light. And at the end of the day, it's what we need the employees and the agency at large to really be able to focus around when it comes down to making those difficult decisions. It's about what is going to be able to serve the public interest best. And I think you do that well. And I think we can improve upon rallying the focus of all these other groups, constituent groups, around what is going to help the public the most, because these are some difficult moments where we're all making some versions of sacrifices. The other area is climate change, and I'll end on that. I see great progress and interest in pushing the needle, in being willing to challenge the marketplace, and I applaud you for that. But I think we need to keep seeking new partnerships. I believe that there's still fuel types out there that are going to be coming online, and I know they represent infrastructure investment, but I also believe that they represent opportunities for our region. So being a willing partner to explore those partnerships, I think it might be key. And with that, I'm going to stop. I really appreciate it. I support the findings, and thank you very much for serving the agency with such great competencies.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. So have I missed any of the board members? No, don't think I have. So thank you for those comments. And I think what I hear here are some good suggestions and things that we ought to make sure we incorporate in a general manager's objectives for fiscal year 2021. And I'll remind you of that in the last draft that I sent out of this review to you, I did attach the draft of that. I've talked it over a bit, as I said, with Director Edwards, but I'd like you each to take a look at that, and Director Gonzalez, Director Way, incorporate some of your thoughts into what we might want to look at as a deliverable and an objective for next year. And I will call each of you just to talk with you a bit about this too, because I think all of these need some deliberations. So I think what I'm hearing this morning is, I think, Doug, everybody believes you are doing a great job as a general manager for TriMet. And again, we're lucky to have you, and do appreciate your efforts and willingness to just put in the hours needed to do this work. And I think we do worry a little bit about your mental well-being, and I think vacation is a good time. Now that you've discovered the zen of fly fishing, I think hopefully you'll be able to do a bit more of that with some time off. But before I ask the board for a motion to approve this, do you have any comments for us, Doug?
Well, thank you. Overall, I mean, thank you for your support as individuals and helping guide me through probably, if someone said there was going to be 100 days of protests and something close to it and riots, with the economy at a recessionary level and COVID, a pandemic going on, not separately, but all at the same time, I wouldn't have believed anybody. But let alone the fires. I forgot fires. So I'm waiting for famine and locusts to come. But I think collectively, I just need to thank the team I get to work with, and that's where it really starts. I'm just part of the orchestra at the end of the day. But there's a lot of amazingly gifted people, passionate people who care about this agency, and speaking to the board on this, but also anybody who does pick this up at home. We've all, as we get gray hair, we all have a chance to have different experiences in other places we've worked. And I can, in my heart and in my mind, easily say the public needs to know just what a great privilege it is, and humbly, to work with the team inside TriMet, who really comes to work every day with their work boots on, whether it be a bus operator or a cleaner, and whether it be our partners in the ATU. And I know there's differences there. That's not new. But yeah, we have work to do there. There's no question. In the spirit of good employees, and those employees are also union members in many cases. So we do have work to do there. But if I look at the overall of it, from the behind the scenes people to the front, it really is a privilege to serve, not to take. And I'm just honored, and thank you for your support.
You're quite welcome, Doug. Well, with that, unless there's any other questions, is what member of the board willing to proffer a motion to accept the performance evaluation for the general manager and approve the adjustments in the vacation leave?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Was that Travis?
Yeah, I'll take it.
I'll second, Linda.
Second, Linda.
Second, Linda. Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the table. Is there any further comments by the board before I call for a vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a further comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say too that, you know, that I think that all of us really appreciate the fact that we can talk to Doug and he's open to listen and hear our issues and concerns. That's been really transformative, I think, for the TriMet, because and I don't know what it was like before I came on the board, but I do know that working with the general manager is not typical when you find certainly agencies as large as this. I've been on other boards, and I know that it's not always an open line of communication as it has been with Doug. So I just wanted to share that as well, and put that on the record so folks understand that Doug doesn't come in with preconceived notions about anything. He comes in and he does listen, and he does take into consideration and with respect and value that the board has to share with him. So I just wanted to share that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve the general manager's performance evaluation and the changes in vacation accrual, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, board, for your comments and work helping put this together. And again, Doug, thank you very much for your performance and work as our general manager. It is greatly appreciated. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. General Manager, for your report this morning.
Well, thank you all for that last motion and your support. As we look forward, I've got quite an extensive set of updates for you today. So if you can just bear with me. The first thing I just would comment on is the state of our current negotiations that were referenced in some of the written materials that were provided to the board. I think, as board members know, typically we don't negotiate through the public forum with the ATU, and we did put the negotiations on pause since the contract expired at the end of last October, and it's been long reactivated. Probably around May or June, it got reactivated, the negotiations together. We are at the stage of mediation, so we have an outside mediator in assisting the parties. There are some significant gaps between the parties still, but there are some areas of progress. So there's a fresh set of eyes for those who've been involved in bargaining before to help us all. And in fact, as we speak today, literally the parties are in mediation today, being Wednesday. So I'm always optimistic that we'll be able to advance the relationship together. And so I think so we are in mediation right now, and I'm not going to get into the details of any parts of the proposal. I will comment that one thing we've historically done here is we will post on our website the different facts of the positions that people can interpret any way they want. So I just encourage people, and we will be updating that very soon again, because we're just in another state of update. So if hopefully mediation can that investment in time together with, I think we've got an excellent mediator from the state of Oregon helping the parties. And from then, as President Warner has indicated, then the next state is one of the parties, if not both, can file for a arbitration period, which we go to. So that's the current state that we're in right now. So as natural, and I think many of us have been through lots of bargaining in many different places over our years, myself included, there's lots of emotion that can come with it, so just want to keep a steady hand on the best spirit of getting to a successful conclusion for parties. But we will get there. We always have, and I believe we always will. So I probably just leave that part there, so the parties can do their work. And I think they are on both sides. So it's not easy, but it's I'd probably just leave it there.
Director Edwards, did you just raise your hand to comment on this? Oops, you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. I apologize.
Okay, great. Sorry, continue on.
Okay, sorry. I will comment to the one public delegation we did have is around the red line. I think if in normal steps that you go through in large projects like this one, this is about a $206 million capital project, which includes double tracking to the airport. Just to remind the board, expansion to Fairplex, and a number of cars, and some rework at I call the aerial spaghetti of Gateway. So we've got just under $100 million that normally we go through an application process for the FDA. In this case, the president directly tweeted out, basically authorizing the project to proceed. So, and specifically referencing TriMet. So, this project has been scrutinized with the FDA and our partnerships very much. Sometimes, if you make too many changes, I'm going to suggest the theory of what you might want to do, and there's the practicality of what you can do and what you can afford to do. And so this project does fit into that. There's a real tendency, as I've already seen recently, the project to be over scoped and over budget. We have to fit within that mandate. And very quickly, this project could go from $200 million to $400 to $500 million, which would actually make the project very unviable. And we would lose the support from the FDA in the context of that. So we're proceeding because we can double track to the airport. And part of that is a contribution also with our partner at PDX, Curtis Robinhold and team. They've been just great partners on this with us for the red line. So it will help us speed up not only the red line, but it's actually going to help us speed up for our customers, for everybody in this region, every single rail line, because the red line is actually holding the speed of the whole network back. Because every train, most trains go from Gateway to across the steel bridge, but all trains go across the steel bridge. In the rail world, you're only as good as the train in front of you. So as they all join together, PDX, the Gateway area is actually, the single track into the airport is actually holding us back. So there are limitations of what we can do. So we're moving from the pure optimization of what we could do to something affordable, and that we can move on, and that's what we're doing. So it will very much help the system. And I don't want to lose sight also of the ability to manage TOD in this area in the long term. It often gets forgotten that we look at just the rail lines, the rail, steel rail. I think Gateway is a beautiful long-term jewel, not only for TriMet, but for this region. It's right by 2 interstate highways. It is 15 minutes to downtown by train, 5 to 10 minutes to the airport. If you listed that out in any major metropolitan city in the world, you go, wow, how do we take advantage of that with the quality of life? So I think there's a beautiful opportunity for TOD, which has been actually thought about in the backdrop of the project we're actually doing. So I'll leave that there. The next one I just wanted to just also congratulate Dee and team on is Kroll, who's the rating agency, and was raised by the Finance and Audit Committee today. Again, reaffirmed AAA or affirmed AAA bond rating. That's great news for this agency, particularly these turbulent waters economically. So that will continue to serve the work the board has done over many years will serve this agency very well. Going to cover off several other items here. Again, I said I've got a fairly long list today. I'd like to give you an update on some of the wildfires and COVID. We'll talk quickly about the ridership in August. I want to cover off the fare collection, particularly on buses that we're reactivating and accepting cash back on board. I'd like to give an update, and I'll bring John Gardner in to talk about the reimagining of safety and security on our system. Some of that came up in earlier conversations today. Really exciting and important work. Steel Bridge Project, the year-end audit report from Moss Adams, and I'm also going to ask Alan Leto to come up and cover off the business plan, particularly how in fact did this agency do last year. So that'll be coming here shortly. So firstly, the wildfires, I think, as Director Way had commented on, and I also want to reach out and thank Director Way because she sent me some of the work and links she was doing personally to help out in Clackamas County. So I just want to do a reverse shout out to her to thank her for her own personal leadership to help all of our community persevere through this and recover. So we know people have been affected by the wildfires, whether they had to evacuate or worried about their family or loved ones, or even other parts of the states where, frankly, some of this destruction has been exceptionally devastating. On top, where employment's been challenged, the economy's hitting, COVID's hitting. So this just wasn't a wildfire. This was I think, a psychological trauma shot to all of us beyond wildfires. So my heart is heavy as we manage this issue together, and our employees. We have had a number of employees who are personally affected by fires due to the threat of whether it be property damage or even the effects of smoke in their homes. I don't know about you, but I even had days where I had smoke inside where I'm covering off the WebEx here today. I could smell it and it didn't go away. So it wasn't just about being in a bus or a train or a cleaner. It followed you home to your residence. So TriMet did change very quickly a temporary leave policy to put in place for employees who were forced from their homes, and we urge others affected by the fires to take leave if they were necessary. So we really wanted to make sure that's what those things are, those type of policies are available for. We adapted it, we expanded it, said please take care of your health first. We also deployed very quickly the heat of the fires, so to speak. The peak of ours started on Wednesday where it really got bad. Thursday morning, I just got to thank our procurement team and the maintenance team. They distributed, I know when you're a large organization such as ourselves, it may seem that to a frontline person that, gee, we don't care, we're on our own. And we try and respond as quick as we possibly can. Literally the next morning, N95 masks, where many couldn't even get them, we had looked upstream a bit and secured a bunch. We actually had our personal managers and leaders delivering masks. We had about 10,000 of them on the initial batch delivered throughout that day and into early Friday morning to throughout all of our different facilities throughout the region. So we sure weren't perfect, but I've got to tell you, people sure gave their best efforts to respond accordingly. And that's not to take away from the mask that's needed. So the COVID mask is separate than the N95 mask. They serve two different purposes. So I really want to thank folks for the efforts there, as well as, of course, our frontline staff just wearing the N95 mask. And normally you have to go through a process where medically you have to get them evaluated and signed, sealed by a medical professional. But Dr. Vines at OHA waived that for us because of the speed of the circumstances that we're following. So with these fires. So I want to thank her for helping us be as resilient, as nimble as we can in our very important partnerships. The part of it most people may not know is we also provided our great operators and our transportation and maintenance people, we provided transportation to the firefighters in Washington County heading to and from the front lines. So we weren't just delivering service, we were allocating buses in the back room down to Newburgh, to other places to help with the repositioning of this chaotic time. And I really would like to call out the Lyft and Paratransit service from Margot Moore and their whole team. They helped evacuate more than 130 people in Clackamas County alone. I think that was even referenced a little bit earlier in one of the reports. More than 100 of those individuals, they had mobility challenges, and they lived, in one case, at a memory care facility in Oregon City. So a big thanks to the nimbleness, if I can, and shout out for our Lift Bear Transit team over there. And when you look at all of this in the midst of the economy, pandemic, the protests, the regrettable riots, I just can't thank our team enough. It's one thing, I'm an old athlete, it's one thing to get up for a short period of time. It's another thing to be on top of your game every day for months and months and months. And that's what this team has been doing across the board, from bus operators all the way through to our service planners, our engineers, our maintenance people. Just everybody's been really going full out for many, many months. And to me, it really is, I'm proud to be part of this orchestra. Sometimes we hit an off note, but it's sure not because we aren't trying. So big thanks. But our heart does go out to all those people impacted. We are looking at ways to try and help our internal employees, whether it be in GoFundMe's, things of that nature. So we're trying to get feedback right now on anybody who we know there's a privacy side to this, and we want to be really sensitive to this. But we want to try and, where those who may need help, that we may be able as an organization to be able to help contribute to some potentially tragic recoveries. Shifting gears a little bit to ridership, just a quick brief update. Again, we very clearly, if you look at the analysis that we provide to the board members and available to the public, the ridership continues to be challenged. In the month of August, we provided just over 3.6 million rides. That's down about 54.5% over August of the prior year, or pre-COVID, if you will. And that was also before I started to put service back in September, moving from 80% or down 20%. We added about 10% more service. So hopefully that'll be a catalyst. We want to be a thought leader in the region to, as we can financially afford it, to getting the service back, to hoping business to open and others to move around in healthy ways like transit. The percentage of 54.5, that's an improvement since July. And if you remember back to when it all started, we were down about 70%. To the paratransit reference by Director Bowen was about 80%. So, but the overall system was about 70% drop. Some of I think the 54.5% that drop still an improvement over the 60-70%. I think you got about a 5% buffer because of the steel bridge work. So it's we had to cut the rail line between the bridge on either side, and we ended up putting shuttles in place. So people were having to use Max and buses more in the shuttle. So that probably reflected, I would suggest, between a sort of a 4 to 5% uplift on the 55% number. So we'll see how that normalizes next month. The next item I'd just like to cover with you is the acceptance of cash. We've nearly completed putting all the safety panels on almost 600 of our buses. We've got about 700. Some of the older buses, we call the 2500 series, we're going to be retiring. So they're not really needed for daily service. So we're just in the process of winding those out of the system as new ones come in. Typically on a typical day, we implement about 511 buses every morning, which is a lot of buses. And right now we're just under 600 buses that have the safety panels on them. So we not only can meet service every day for our operators, that they've got the protections that help with COVID as well as a secondary measure, not a primary measure. But we've now got a very healthy spare ratio now, that if one bus has an accident or a breakdown of some kind, that we've got backups in place. That has now given me confidence to activate collecting of cash back, which many of our operators actually been asking for, because it's caused challenges for them and for a variety of reasons. So we will be October 1st. We have already started signaling this through social media and other communications that we'll be starting collecting cash fares on the bus system again. So we do know we've also been trying to use that period when we didn't collect cash for trying to get people converted to the hop card, and we've in fact had some success. So we in fact have we've given out about 10,000 free hop cards as a chance for conversion. So don't let the crisis go to waste is kind of what we've been trying to look at here. And also to remind people, which cash does not get a discount, but with a hop card, you get fare capping that this board some period ago put in place. So there's some value to the hop card for a variety of reasons that we all know about. So, so that is coming. Next topic is, I think, in front of all of our minds, is pushing forward on efforts of reimagining safety security on the system and TriMet overall. Over the past 2 days, we've held some recent listening sessions with the community to hear their thoughts, concerns, opportunities to reframe how we might want to look in going forward. We've also activated soliciting feedback online through an online survey. That will be open till Sunday, this coming Sunday, and so really encourage anyone listening here today or picking this up elsewhere to participate if they haven't yet had that opportunity. It's on our homepage at trimet.org. And so what I'm maybe going to do now is I'm just going to hit the pause button and see if John Gardner wants to unmute. And I think he can probably give an additional update on some of the status of blue ribbon panel, things of that nature. So there's a lot of activity that's working behind the scenes that's just on the edge of coming forward. So John, I'll just hit the pause button and over to you for a moment. Are you there?
While we're waiting, does the board have any other comments or questions for Doug on the issues he's already covered? Okay, John, are you there now? I'm not hearing him, Doug. You want to come back to him?
Yeah, I'm going to see if maybe Bernie, you can try and track him down, or is there any comments, Bernie, you want to make on this one?
Yeah, so just very briefly, I'm not sure, I do have a chat here, see if John doesn't mention it. We are in the midst of the project that John is leading to reimagine the safety and security system on TriMet. It's a multi-pronged effort. The piece that is rolled out right now and is underway and most active is the community outreach element. We're doing a lot of work with community-based organizations to do outreach to individuals and groups that aren't typically engaged in conversations like this. The Coalition of Communities of Color is leading that effort, but they're working with a whole range of other organizations such as Centro Cultural out in Washington County, ERCO, and others to make sure that we're accessing folks who may have language barriers or just are not as experienced in engaging in these kinds of conversations. And we'll be talking with them about what their concerns are about security on the system, how they feel about the current policing structure, whether that makes them feel more or less secure, what kinds of changes they would like to see, and how we might reinvest the $1.8 million that the general manager has identified as available for this effort. So that's sort of phase one. We also have a survey that's been circulated by a lot of different organizations to our Writers Club and internally as well to gather information about how folks would like to see the system change, or if they would like to see it stay the same.
Bernie, I think John's just hopped on here now too. So
okay, John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so I just covered off the community outreach portion and was about to turn to the Blue Ribbon panel and the best practices research. So you may want to pick it up from there.
Okay. Yeah, and I followed along. I just couldn't. I had a communication problem. So Jeff, if you want to give me some sharing ability, I will just share some images and walk through the outreach efforts.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Jeff, I'm on my work phone and on my desk, my Surface. So I would.
Oh, I see. All right, let's try this other one.
Okay, how's that, folks? Can you see that image?
All good, John.
Perfect. So again, apologies for the disconnect. Yeah, we are all in this project, and we're off to a great start. And I definitely want to acknowledge what Director Way said this morning about the difficulties in engaging people, not just during the normal summer issues, but just obviously engaging the community during the summer, during a pandemic, and then now in the middle of the first, I guess, online school year has been quite challenging. And then obviously recently with the tragedies of the fires that have affected our counties and our state. And yet we feel really good about the amount of feedback we've received so far. And just as a primer, and Bernie said this already, but this project has essentially three components: community-wide listening, the establishment of a local panel to take all that information and to develop recommendations. And eventually those recommendations will be moved forward based on the GM's discretion into new non-police response resources. So just a little bit more information about what we've done today. We obviously have launched the Public Safety and Security website. We've completed 5 TriMet committee and writer focus groups, and this is what Director Gonzalez was speaking to already. We've heard from our TIAC and our TIAC agencies, from our CAT committee. We brought in 2 writer club focus groups to hear directly from writers on the system, as well as writers that are participating in our low-income fare program. And also next week, we're going to convene 2 youth focus groups that are connected to our TriMet Youth Subcommittee, a group that TIAC launched last year. We are, as Bernie said, we are also working with some traditional and non-traditional partners. And this week and next week, we will be working to convene over 20 individual focus groups. We have the Coalition of Communities of Color convening their member organizations around this conversation, as well as the Portland United Against Hate convening their member organizations. And then we have organizations convening their specific communities to go very much deeper into the survey questions and other questions about their ideas, their feedback, how their community feels about using the system, and the steps we can take to make it safer. And that's a large group of folks. And we still are getting folks interested in participating. So the final list will look a little different when we do a full program report out next in November. Some of these organizations are going beyond focus groups. Some of them are actually in a position to do one-on-one surveys, mainly focusing around language supports to make sure that the person's being interviewed or being able to participate in their language, or to sort of help folks who can't use a technology or can connect with a focus group. So we're trying to make all pathways to give us feedback available. This week and next week, we're also going through and doing TriMet employee groups. Obviously our operators, some of our security partners and staff, our service workers, and just a lot of the frontline employees to make sure we capture their voice as well. And as Doug mentioned, we've completed 2 online forums, which we have great presentations and prompts, and we're going to be posting those on our website, the project website, just to allow for folks to get more context about the project in general. All of the surveys that we've put out there have been translated into 7 languages, which are available on our project website, but we've also made those available to different community partners to share across the region. I believe we've received over 500 survey responses in different languages, as that build into our total of 11,000 so far. But we're hoping to get a few more. And as Doug said, or Bernie said, the survey closes this weekend. So we're still promoting the heck out of it to get people's voices as part of this process. Generally, it's the timeline we feel good about. We're on time. We could use another week, but it is what it is. But we have a massive amount of internal staff doing heavy lifts, from public affairs and marketing and outreach to our safety and security, and Marla and her team, which have leveraged a ton of time and talent to this conversation, and then our own research staff. And so I can't wait to sort of give them their due. We get closer to the end of the project at the end of October. But generally speaking, I feel good about where we're at. So in terms of next steps, I mean, as Bernie alluded to, and I'm finally catching up with his summary, is we will be receiving our final reports from our internal our internal research about crime and incidents on the system, as well as our external research related to promising practices across other transit properties around the country in terms of community partnerships or different models or different approaches. We'll be receiving those the first week of October and making those available to our committee. And then we'll receive all of the focus group reports and all the online survey analysis second week of October. And that's obviously a lot of data, because if you've had a chance to take our survey, you realize we actually have a lot of open-ended questions. So we have a lot of staff working with us to sort of go through all of those thousands of ideas and recommendations and thoughts, so we can synthesize that into some really understandable information for the regional committee once it's convened. Obviously, the name of the committee is the Transit Safety Advisory Committee, and they'll be convening the second week of October to begin the reviewing all the data, all the research, and start working through recommendations for TriMet's leadership to consider. And then the idea, of course, is all of this information, all of the work, all of the ideas will be available on the website. And then my hope is that moving this forward beyond the project, we will be reconstituting our current TriMet Safety Committee, so we would have an ongoing community partnership to help us move this stuff forward beyond the project. So that's sort of the project update and next steps. We are still taking direct ideas, and we promoted this during the online sessions, both in English and Spanish, that folks can still just contact our department directly through the equity@trimet.org website, and or they can go to the website and continue to use the survey through the weekend. And I think I did one of these out of order, but I wanted to share a snapshot of the initial list of the advisory committee members. And so the good and the bad news, and I think someone brought
Any
this up.
chance you can make that a little bit bigger, John? It's
yes.
People like me think it's an eye test and I'm failing again.
Certainly.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
Yes. So we have 6 pending members, and these are folks that have soft committed. And ultimately, it's because we are asking for a good amount of folks' time to really dig into these issues. And some of them are leaders of organizations, and some of them are part of larger systems. And so we're hoping to close the loop on them today or tomorrow. And these are the names you don't see are folks that represent juvenile justice. We're looking for a few more house of service organization partners, some behavioral health folks, and some employer groups that serve transit dependent employees. But what we know we have today is Dr. Bev Scott, who has worked with us in the past and is a national transit expert, Polly Hansen, who's a national safety on transit expert, Kevin Modica, who's a retired police and transit police commander, Jan Campbell, who leads CAP but is also part of Disability Rights Oregon, Patricia Daniels, who's the Executive Director of Construction Hope, Jonathan Colon, who is with Central Cultural in Washington County, Marcus Mundy with the Coalition of Communities of Color, and Joe McFerrin, who is the executive of Rosemary Anderson High School that has locations both in Portland and East Portland or East Multnomah County. So we feel really good about the core group. I would share the other names, but I don't want to get ahead of them with their own sort of confirmations. But like I said, there's an additional 6 names that I can share with you offline, but I don't want to say they've committed when they're really close. So that's the breakup of the committee so far. And like I said, we got about 2.5 weeks before our first meeting, so we're chomping at the bit to get started, but want to make sure we have the right folks at the table. The only other thing I would share is that we have the meetings will be open meetings. So a lot of our government partners have been really interested in participating, and we're going to allow them all, the meetings will be streamed live, and we're going to allow them to be participating in the background as just audience members, and we're trying to get their feedback throughout the process to make sure, you know, their voice is sort of there as well. But we really want the recommendations to come from folks who serve transit dependent riders or vulnerable riders on the system, or have some sort of stakeholder to the ridership and ongoing safety and security of the system. So that's where we're at now. I can totally pause for questions. That was like normal, pretty fast.
John, I mean, before we go to questions on this one, because the unique importance of this one, a couple things. One is, I think from the outset, I always remember Director Stovall's comment that this is a very aggressive timeline when we kick this off, and it was intentionally by design, because we also have, you know, starting January 1st, the City of Portland's transit police are not going to provide the same service. So we have some of our own operational needs to be really keeping the heat on ourselves. And we just by nature want to keep the heat on ourselves. But I also want to be cognizant of the time side of things. So we're proceeding to the timelines you've talked about, but it is, I must say, to the board, the public, it is on my watch list in terms of am I pushing too aggressively here timeline. So I'm just watching it right now, and I just want to then sort of pivot here to the work that John and team have done, and there is an immense amount of resources going into this effort behind the scenes. Typical iceberg picture comes to mind of analytically, data analytics, community outreach, all this, working with our partners at ERCO, Central Cultural, et cetera, to pull this all off in this time frame. So there really is a sizable effort inside TriMet to help do this. But the time piece is very much on my watch list to we try and come up with the right outcome at the end of the day. That's the objective here, to do it in a thoughtful way and not just drag these things out, which sometimes they can happen. So, and I do want to finally say before I open it up, I really want to thank John. John is doing just an outstanding job helping sweat the details here and helping us through these complex dynamics. So thanks, John. And I'm just going to hit pause here, President Warner, if there's anyone who wants to have any questions on this piece before I move on to my next general manager updates.
I see Director Edwards has raised his hand, so I think he probably has a question for John or you.
Yes, thank you, John, for that report. And I certainly appreciate your challenge in trying to get that committee put together. My question, I guess, is how big is the committee going to be? And how diverse is it going to be in regards to young people? When I say young people, I'm talking about probably 25 to 35 years old, but also I'm talking about high school students, perhaps getting them involved in this process as well. I think that's important to have them on the committee, but also make sure that their voices are being heard and they have as much value and input into the process as some of our senior members that are on that committee.
Thank you. It's great questions. So a couple things about the youth voice. So we are and have been convening focus groups that are youth focused only. And one of those group partners is Portland Youth Build, but POIC is another. We did reach out to SEI and a couple organizations like that for that same opportunity to gather those voices. But next week, we'll be pulling folks from different high schools through our Access Transit High School program to make sure they're part of that conversation as well. In terms of the age of the committee members, there is one of the pending members who's more of a younger, the demographic that we've asked to participate as well, to get that sort of emerging leader youth voice as part of the process. So I think the youth voice will be well represented. And the other thing I would say is all the surveys will be able to tell you exactly the ages of the survey group. So you'll get a chance to see what young people thought about the questions we asked and or what their ideas were. So when we start parsing through that 11,000 survey responses, we'll be able to explain and walk folks through the different demographics and what the themes were in terms of what they'd like to see moving forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
Just to add on to this, thanks, John. Great answer. It's also, you could see by the numbers, this is an area where sometimes when you do basic research and data analytics and such, you do general samples and such. This is an area by the different kinds of research, analytics, surveys, focus groups, we're really going heavy in here so not one constituency group tilts the scale of any part of the viewpoint. We really want to capture and create a system that is welcoming for all, which comes back to our own vision statement. So the outreach is really pretty extensive here right now, which has been stressing time challenges for poor John, who's responding. So, sorry. Any other comments? Welcome or questions?
Hey, Doug, the last thing I wanted to say about the timeline, there is another larger effort called Reimagine Oregon that's working across multiple areas. And one of the things they had asked, it's being led by a group of African-American leaders who run nonprofits. One of the things that they had said about this project or transit safety projects is they wanted to see action within 90 days, which did parallel Doug's commitment to move the system forward in 90 days. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do and be mindful for, as well as there may be recommendations that require us to sort of go to the legislature. So anything that would take that sort of lift would need to be really well cemented by November, which is still very late, but that's one of the other reasons we're trying to drive this project by the current timeline. So, all right.
Okay, John, thank you very much. So continuing on.
Director Way raised her hand here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
Sorry, Director Way.
That's okay. I don't know if John's still around, but thank you so much, John, for just the continuous updates around this project. I guess my question would be around the stakeholder, the committee group, and I saw one of your slides that said, that this group would be coming up with recommendations. How are we prioritizing equity among the voices that are in that group, particularly from those who may not have a lot of political power? I'm thinking about, if we're trying to invite young people, right? Or if we're trying to invite Black or Native leaders there, and oftentimes their voices are often unheard or not amplified in sort of a traditional sense. Now I understand we want to, try to listen to everyone and all that, but I really feel like in those conversations and in those recommendations, we need to think about power and race and how privilege shows up in terms of who's recommending these things. And I guess my question is, are we trying to get consensus from everyone, or, what is, I guess, what is the type of recommendation that we are ultimately seeking from? Because I do think that layer of adding equity is really important, so that, yes, voices can be heard, but again, voices that are more marginalized, traditionally not heard, can also be more amplified.
No, great question, Director Wade. And I guess what I would say is, when July, I think it was, or when we did the board briefings, we are centering this conversation on Black. They're so important. So we understand about the system and how they feel and what they believe the strategies could make them more safe and welcoming on the system. So, and to be fair, and will remain so. And the majority culturally specific, underrepresented, and so we're going to share what we find. We know recommendations take, we're thinking that the recommendations will sort of be short, mid, and long-term areas of work. And so, but this process will work with our equity lens, and we'll follow that going forward. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to come up with some things that can really help the system, to be frank, grow ridership and just really be more responsive. And so I look forward to bringing that back to you all in November. All right, thanks again.
Great, thank you. And sorry, my audio might be just kind of cutting in and out, so there might be a little bit of a lag.
I think we heard it. Thank you. Okay, any other comments, President Warner, on this one that I'm not able to see on my screen?
I don't see any right at the moment. Any other board member that wishes to ask? No, Doug, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm having a few technical challenges myself here. So, John, thank you again. Just moving along on my updates here, because there are a lot. The Steel Bridge wrap up, I just want to let people know it was a very successful project. Thanks to so many people internally and our contractors, Stacy Whitbeck and others, wrapped up August 30th. It was on time, within budget, just slightly less actually. This was actually, normally I don't comment on all these projects, but this was kind of history making for TriMet in several ways. Firstly, it was the largest capital improvement project in our whole 50-year history. So it's extremely complex. It has been years in the making, and it literally involved every single department in all of TriMet. It was our longest ever shutdown of actually just short of a month. It was also completed during the pandemic, which is actually one of the significant risks that always kept me awake, that if we get all the track ripped up and it becomes a hot zone for the COVID, then how do we get out of our own trouble here? So, but anyhow, the team did a great job. The mitigation plans were well done, led by Steve Witter, Sam Dessou, and a whole team with them. It was also the highest number of employees for any project that signed up as ride guides, bar none, of any project, whether it be the Orange Line opening or other ones. So this was an example of all hands on deck, and I know I did five shifts out there myself, and I'll tell you, being in front of the product really helps you eliminates all the issues, and you get to see, yes, almost everybody wearing a mask. It was great to see. So the mask wearing issue is, I think we're very much the exception side, if that's any example. So it really was a team effort, so I just can't thank them enough. Next one I'd like to move to, we've only got a couple more updates here for you, is I'd like to, as was introduced at Finance and Audit Committee, I'd just like to cover off the year-end audit report. So Julie Desimon, Ashley Austin, and Rachel Tarver, I think they're here from Moss Adams now. If you can maybe unmute, and I'll maybe turn it right over to you to update the board on the year-end audit report.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug and board, for giving us some time. We'll try to make this as efficient as possible. We did just meet with the audit committee, the audit and finance committee, finance and audit committee, get the acronym, in-depth discussion on the audit. So what we want to do today is talk to you a little bit about where we're at with the audit, what we have issued, what we have not issued, and give you some required communications, and give you a little bit of time, or as much time as you'd like, to answer any questions that you have during the audit process. So we've been engaged as far as the financial statement audit to audit the financial statements under both generally accepted auditing standards and generally accepted government auditing standards. Both of those opinions have been issued, and both of those opinions are a clean opinion in the current year. The one change that we have that we normally present to you at this time is the single audit or the uniform grant guidance audit. Typically, we do the majority of the procedures at the same time. Oh, thank you. At the same time as our financial statement audit, which we've done. The problem this year lies in the about $118 million or $115 million of the the CARES Act funding that got funneled through the FTA. The FTA did release a Q&A saying what the requirements under the program authoritative in nature, and there is a CARES compliance supplement that will be coming from the federal government at some point. That has not yet been issued. The regular compliance supplements that originally were supposed to come out in April didn't come out until August, so we're waiting on that now. So what we did do is we did finish all the testing we could. We compared all the applicable expenses and what we sampled to what the Q&A said was required. We found no discrepancies in our testing at this point, but at this point we are on hold waiting for that CARES supplement to come down to see if the feds are going to require any additional testing that we aren't expecting at this point. So that's where we sit. Your uniform grant guidance audit is not due until March 31st. But the feds are, at this point, we're handcuffed by the feds, and we'll wait until that comes out. So the goal is, we heard late fall, which I'm not sure what that means to DC. So we'll see where that comes down. Our hope is that we can get this all done and issued by the end of December. So that's where we're at this a minimum standards compliance audit and our audit of the compliance with the 2001 revenue bonds, which are also clean opinions. The last thing I want to state really quickly in this piece is we went to 100% virtual audit. One thing we had to ask for is a lot of additional information this year, and that's because your operations changed so drastically. The first 3 quarters were pretty standard quo or status quo, and then COVID. Fraud-related procedures, just management procedures, making sure we had an understanding, and we were asking for things outside of what I would consider our norm and our first cut at what we call our prepared by client listing. To actually sit here to, I think is just a testimony to the incredible amount of work and hard work and focus of your finance and accounting teams. From starting with Dee, Kara, Eric, and the entire teams would jump on video calls with us, which is sharing that's here today. So we really appreciate all the hard work, the flexibility, and just the perseverance to get through what ended up being just a very strange year and continues to be a very strange year. So findings real quick. And then Ashley will continue on with some of our required communications, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thanks, Julie. So as she mentioned, we are required to communicate certain matters to you all. First, as a reminder, it's our responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statements and plan and perform the audit to obtain a reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Meaning we apply auditor judgment when designing and conducting the audit, and we don't look at every transaction. If there are any changes in accounting policies, we are required to bring them to your attention. So during the year, management did implement a change in accounting for the debt service fund to the budgetary basis. We reviewed the update and verified that the updated policy was compliant and were comfortable with the change. There were no changes to management judgment or accounting estimates during the year. There was one adjustment made as a result of our audit procedures over capital asset disposals. During this testing, we noticed that an asset was improperly retained in the capital asset account. And after thoroughly investigating, the matter was quantified and corrected by management, and the impact is now correctly reflected in the financial statements that are issued as part of this packet. The adjustment was to record the loss on sale, which was retained on the district's books at year end. Ashley, if you want to continue through our final required communications.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. So we are also required to talk to you about any management consultation with other accountants that occurred. This is more opinion shopping, getting at opinion shopping. None of those consultations occurred during the year that we are aware of. There were no disagreements with management. This is really getting at if there was a disagreement in terms of an accounting transaction or an entry that we were proposing, or just any sort of accounting treatment that management decided to record in their books and records during the year. There were no disagreements during this year. There were no difficulties in performing the audit. As Julie mentioned, we did perform the audit completely remotely, but we were still provided all of the required documentation that we requested and needed to look at as part of our audit procedures. We still were able to have access to all the individuals that we wanted access to. So no difficulties in performing the audit this year. There were no issues. There were no issues discussed with management prior to our retention as your auditors. We're also required to talk to you a little bit about whether there are any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies as a result of our audit. There were none of either at this point. If there are any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified as a result of the additional testing, if we have to do any additional testing as a result of the CARES Act funding, the compliance supplement that's released later this fall, we will be sure to communicate those items to you. We did have a few best practice recommendations that were discussed with management verbally throughout our audit procedures, just because we do work with so many transit agencies and other governmental entities. Those are just best practice recommendations that we identify based on our work throughout the government sector. And then we finally did have a few internal control recommendations that were discussed thoroughly with the Finance and Audit Committee, and we will be issuing a written communication upon issuance of all of our all of our audit reports, which includes the uniform guidance audit that we are holding until we receive the final compliance supplement from the OMB. That wraps up our required communications. So just want to open it up to the board for any questions that you might have.
Any comments or questions from the board? And Travis, I know this is the time of year you live for. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I just unmuted myself so that I could speak. And as everybody knows, everybody thinks holiday season is the most wonderful time of the year, but it really is audit season. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I look forward to this. Ultimately, I just want to make a couple quick comments. First and foremost, the Finance and Audit Committee reviewed, like I said earlier, had a brief preview of all of this information, and we gave our questions and comments briefly there, and we fully support what the report has identified. And then I also want to just continue to give accolades to Eric and Kara on our finance team, and of course Dee Brookshire and the entire finance team in regards to all of the great work, not only with the audit, but continuously throughout the year. I get the opportunity to see a number of audits, and the cleanliness of our audit, the speed of our audit is always something that's very impressive for an organization our size. So I continue to hold that as an incredible hallmark for the leadership that we have all the way from the top in regards to the excellence that we present every single year. And that's also shown through the consistency of receiving the AAA rated debt agency, the AAA rated debt from the rating agencies. All of that stuff is kind of the outcomes of the great work that we do throughout the year so that we can lead to an audit of this type of excellence. So my hat's off to the entire team as we provide leadership in this space. And I also want to thank Moss Adams for being able to pivot in this time of COVID, as well as our team, to get the audit done 100% virtual, which is always something that's a little bit tricky when we don't have the ability to come on site and do our production of documents and information in person. So again, the Finance and Audit Committee has reviewed all this information also and recommends that the audit be accepted. And ultimately, again, thanks go out to the entire team, Moss Adams, and our team here at TriMet.
Thank you, Travis. Are there any other comments or questions by the rest of the board? I see none. So again, what you just heard from Travis is a good piece of work by staff, a good piece of work by our auditor, and as usual, a great result from the work. So again, everybody is to be congratulated. I don't believe we need to take action on this, do we, Mr. General Manager?
No.
Okay.
So thank you to all for this one. And I'm going to ask the board to indulge me. I know this has been a long GM report, may break the records, but we've got one more item to cover off, and that is really around our business plan. This is really setting the stage. I'm going to ask Ellen Lato to come on about just to review with the board. How did we do last year? Where were we over? Where were we equal? Where were we under? And this really sets the stage for a week from now, where we're going to have the board strategy session that starts to kick off, which you thought was just finishing up last year. We're really already looking ahead to next year and over the rolling 5-year plan that we have. So this really helps allow the board over a week to maybe let it sink in a bit, and then we'll pick this up. We will pick this up just a week from now to set the stage for the development of the next strategy. So Ellen, over to you.
Great, thanks, Doug. Hopefully you all can hear me, and I will be sharing my screen for a presentation here, so please bear with me for a moment while I get that up and going. Just stop me at any point if you can't see something or you can't hear me, but I'm going to kind of buzz through this because we've got a fair number of measures and not a lot of time to go through them. All of this information, of course, it will be available to you afterwards, and we'll be talking more at the board strategy session next week about business plan and in November as well. So for the update for the business plan, this is for the end of FY 2020, so really a June 30th, 2020 snapshot. And of course, all of this is supporting our goals and our vision, mission, values. So as the quick reminder, I think you all know this, but the objectives help us figure out what kinds of key strategic actions we need to do to make progress towards those goals, to support our vision, mission, and values. We look at measures then to learn how our key strategic actions are performing, understand whether we're making progress towards those objectives and ultimately towards those goals. And so that's the purpose of looking back at these measures each year periodically to understand, are we headed in the direction we think we are, so that we can kind of put a magnifying glass, on this and really understand how we're doing. And there's always the opportunity cost, so we have to stay focused on things that are strategic and are really going to do the best we possibly can in terms of providing benefit. I've changed the format for this presentation a little bit since last year. Hopefully this will be easier to read. What you're going to see is a series of graphics that look like this. There are a number of measures that we don't update each month. They get updated once a year perhaps, or periodically, and those are going to appear like the ones on the right. Green means on target, yellow means close but not quite, red means off target, up arrow goes with green. That doesn't mean the number has gone up, it just means that we're on target. Down arrow goes with red. But anything that hasn't been updated since we published in March, that's in that pale color. So I'm going to focus only in on those measures that show the bold colors, the dark green, the bright yellow, the dark red. But I'll also note there are measures, obviously, that will be affected by COVID-19 and or the economic impacts. And then there are a few others that are worthy of note that I've got little icons next to. So we're only going to focus on those that are bold, but all of these are available for later review. And of course, the most obvious thing that's come up a number of times already is that the COVID-19 has had a huge effect on our ridership and therefore on many other factors, including fares, including any of our measures that connect to ridership, even if they're not directly about that. So just keep that in mind as we go through, that it affects a whole range of measures. Also, obviously, the economic forecast and impact. This is just an illustration of that, the unemployment from heading out of this is the past 10 years, coming from the recession from before and hitting COVID, dramatically jumping up. And that affects travel demand as well. So going into the measures then, again, I'm only going to hit the highlights. Satisfied riders, our first goal. There are two measures that have really changed. One is fixed route boardings, down significantly, as you've already heard. And then the other is customer complaints about personal safety and security. And the total number is down, but because our ridership is so down, the number of boardings is down, the rate is up. So both of those are off target and very much affected by COVID-19. Shifting to the second goal, satisfied community, stakeholders, and employees, cost per boarding ride on Lyft service and rides for seniors and persons with disabilities are down because overall ridership is down, overall demand is down, and yet we're not able to sort of shrink Lyft costs as quickly as the demand goes down, so the cost per boarding ride went up. The other one that had not changed since May, this was true June 30th, that we were operating our battery electric buses on the line 52. Since then, as I think you know, there have been additional electrical problems. They've been shipped back to the manufacturer to address and correct those, and we hope to have them back in service during this fiscal year. So as of June, we were on target. Right now, we are off target. For the third customer goal, we don't have any measures that have changed since March, so I'm going to move on to the first internal business practices goal. A number of updates with these, including passenger claims are below target, preventable deaths at 0, which is where we want to be always. Collisions and on-time performance are all in good place, in good range, partially because of COVID, because traffic has been reduced, but we were on a good path with most of those as well. On-time performance, you see we are off target for the annual average, but we are on an overall positive trend. In fact, right now we're at more like 95%, which if we stay on that kind of track, will be well above target for next year. For the rest of the measures under that goal, nothing has changed significantly since we went to press with the business plan. Going to the second goal under internal business practices, the one thing that has changed is we've added a couple of enhanced transit bus projects. Those are bus lanes or intersection improvements that help buses get through traffic more quickly and move the many people that are on board through and reduce their travel time. For the last goal under internal business practices, these are both very much, or the first one is very much impacted by COVID. This is about the percent of fares collected through the HOP FastPass program. And of course, we want that to be as high as possible to provide the benefit to our riders and to simplify our fare collection. This is up, it's above target. It would have been anyways, but it's up even higher because our total ridership and therefore our total fares are down, and the HOP FastPass represents an even higher percentage of that. And also included in that, of course, is more recently the inability to take fares, or excuse me, fares in cash, which you heard will be changing in October. The total number of taps, this is not a rate, the total number of taps is also above target, which is great because that comes even though the fact that we are down total on ridership and down total on fare collection. The first goal under people and innovation, nothing substantially has changed since we went to press. And then the second goal, under people and innovation, turnover, average time to fill are off target. Part of that probably has to do with some effects under COVID, but in general, just not quite hitting target. Acceptance to offer is still above target. And then the percent of employees below their predicted compensation. You can see we are off target on that, though overall we are on an improving trend, and that is a very aggressive target. Getting to 0 is very difficult with this kind of measure because the predicted compensation gets modified by what the employment market is actually doing. So it's a bit of a moving target. The last goal at the bottom of the page here under people and innovation, not a change, but that also milestones for employee recognition, along with a number of improvements, especially in our operations, have had to slow down a little bit just as COVID takes over a lot of the focus as it needed to. The first financial goal, first financial goal set of measures, both in positive. The first one has changed, has been updated and is on target. That's the net medical benefits cost per covered employee. There's a chance that may be impacted by COVID with new bids coming in the new year. We'll see that, I think, in January or February. No changes under the second financial goal. And then some changes under the last financial goal, where we see passenger revenue over system costs below target. That makes sense given the fact that our demand reduced so much, which means that our fares are lower. Our system costs did come down as we reduced service, but not as much as ridership, and so the percentage is off target. Our bus operating cost actually was on target, which is great. The other modes are off target, and part of that is also reflected probably in, or it looks like they are reflected somewhat in COVID with our reduction in total service not able to be matched as completely by our reduction in cost with working so hard to retain employees. And then the final measure did not change because it is a budget-based measure rather than a sort of monthly service-based measure. But I did want to flag that with the substantial COVID-19 impacts because it is about new service. And with COVID-19 and the economic impacts and the recovery, we are really, in terms of service, in recovery mode and gaining back ridership and demand and recovering service, not in new service mode. But we will, of course, work to get back there as quickly as possible, but that's not the case now, and we shouldn't expect it right away. That's it for the quick measures update. A mix, a whole number of them obviously impacted by COVID, a number still headed in the right direction, some of the ones headed in the wrong direction impacted by COVID. All of those we'll be watching as we go into the update for next fiscal year's business plan. Looking forward, we have a session next week to start talking about priorities for that next plan. There's a session in November. Both of those will be talking about business plan in addition to other items. And then in January, we'll be bringing a draft business plan for review and comment to you and to the public and to all employees. And then in March, we'd expect to finalize the business plan for FY22 so that we'll be prepared in May to ask for your adoption of the proposed FY22 budget. That is the conclusion of my presentation, and I would hand it then back over to Doug.
Great. Alan, thank you. I think, Mr. Board President, if there's any questions, happy to answer them. This is intended to be to kind of set the stage for next week. So we can either answer them now, answer them offline if people have them. But again, you'll be getting a lot more because we really want to engage the board fully next week at the board strategy session to talk about what course corrections we need to do, what objectives, and what is the fundamental environment that we're facing. Right now, we have the privilege of a CARES Act funding of about $185 million. Basically, as of we're speaking now, that is committed. The expenditures will continue to roll out. So we've been trying to manage the financial side of things prudently, but those kinds of elements will factor into the building of next year's business plan. So happy to answer any questions people may have off the top.
See a couple board members with their hands raised. Lori Bauman, Director Bauman.
Yes. My question is, what kind of materials you're going to give us to review before the strategy session to set the table?
For the business plan, we'll have a draft points of emphasis, which is really what should we think about, what should we really focus in on for the next year. I think there will be some other materials for the other information as well. Sorry, for the other agenda items as well.
So we might see those before the end of the week.
It may be. I think I've asked for them. Great question. We should be able to get you to them by Saturday. I think we're trying to get them by end of the week. Depends on I'm trying to go through them, President Warner, by Friday of this week. So hopefully over the weekend.
Good. That's a good question, Lori. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, President Warner. I had a question really on the heels of Director Bauman's comment. I'd like to be mentally prepared for this conversation, and you've provided a great primer. What are some of the major pieces of the strategic plan that you would say have been most severely impacted by the last 6 months of happenings? Where would you say we might want to really look at the timelines we've set based on the new reality here? Is there any input you could provide for that? And that question was for Alan, actually.
Well, I'm happy to say that if you'll remember, we scrambled and did a COVID-19 update to the business plan, and so in May, I think that was, by the time we got to May, we presented to you a brief, I think a very brief presentation of the COVID-19 addendum to the business plan. And so we adjusted the timing of all of our key strategic actions that needed to be adjusted. I'm sure there's still some more work around doing that since we've got, you know, several more months worth of learning under our belts. But I'm happy to say in terms of sort of tactics and our understanding of available resources at the time, we've done a lot of those changes. So what I'm going to really be thinking about and ask you to think about is, what should we be focusing on? What are the big picture 6 or 8 issues we should be focusing on for FY 2022 that are strategic? And that's what the document that I mentioned that you'll be getting ahead of time gives you some ideas about what we've thought about it internally with staff. Where should we be focusing? And so that will hopefully seed the conversation about where you'd like us to really be thinking, what's the most important for us to think about being strategic while we also are still dealing with the tactical issues of, you know, continuing to deal with COVID-19 and the economic recovery.
Maybe can I just add to this? I really appreciate Director Gonzalez's question, and I was listening to it, I think we need to provide to you prior to the session. So Ellen and I will undertake this over the next few days to really go down by our key strategic areas, key strategic initiatives, and we'll outline for you what we think is COVID impacted or a risk for next year for COVID impact, which may carry through. And I also would suggest we separate out, because COVID triggered an economic financial impact. So there's the managing of the pandemic and disease, i.e. supply of seats on a bus, as simple as that. But the other part is the economy, and it's going to play a bigger role in our financial resources. So I think we need to maybe run those parallel. So we'll try and get that to you as part of the information, at least our quick cut.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my fear is that we might be missing major conversations because we might not have thought about, for example, ridership and how we bring back the confidence. I mean, that's not just a COVID thing. It's going to impact many areas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just don't want to underestimate the importance of financial oxygen to an organization. There's a lot of great desires and spirits of things, but if the agency does not have access to adequate funding, we have to either create new sources of funding or size the business accordingly in our services. And we're seeing this across the country right now. Other agencies are going all the way through this, particularly those tied to sales tax.
Other questions?
Absolutely. Ridership recovery and financial resiliency are on that list that you'd see anyway. And as Doug said, we'll dig more into that.
Oh, good. Perfect. Good comments. So I think we're going to be set here to keep you on your toes here next week when we have this dialogue, because I think there's some meaty discussions we need to get into. So thanks for bringing those up.
Okay. Alan, thank you. Mr. Board President, I apologize for the length of it. There's just a lot of issues that I think the board wanted to make them aware today, is longer than normal. So that would conclude my report to you.
That's good. Well, you made up for it in terms of scheduling small amounts of business items for us to take action on. So with that then, and I did say, chatted with everybody, said I'm not going to stop for a break because I assume people can take a break as they need to, as we've been going through this morning. So I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, which really is just one agenda item, which is the approval of the board meeting minutes for August 12th, 2020, which I was not there, so I'm relying on you to tell me work. So are there comments or questions about the minutes or changes or corrections? I'm hearing none. Is there then a motion? I'm sorry.
I just want to acknowledge for the record, it was a very smoothly run meeting by Director Stovall. We made record time. Just saying.
Yeah, wow. I appreciate that.
So should I be taking this personally? Is that what I'm hearing?
Don't get anything back.
All right then. Is there then a motion to approve the board meeting minutes from August 12th, 2020?
So moved.
Your motion from Director Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
A second, Director Stovall. Any further discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve the board minutes for August 12th, 2020, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move right into our resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 20-09-37, which is adopting a revised investment policy. Is that you, Mr. General Manager, to start this off?
Yes, it is, as I try and hit unmute. Sorry, there about. Yes, so this is a investment policy. This provides a framework for our accountability or oversight and the reporting on TriMet's investments overall. It's reviewed on an annual basis to remind the board. And this resolution replaces the existing investment policy, as well as make amendments which have been reviewed and approved by the Oregon Short-Term Fund Board, or they refer to as OSTF. This updated policy is available to you. It should be in your board package in Exhibit A of your board package. It provides one part is a clean version and the other one is redlined to see where the changes are. There's no financial impact from the adoption of the resolution, and your recommendation is requested here. And I think, Dee, if there's any comments you want to provide, that'll be the time.
Thank you. As you stated, the information is very straightforward. It's been provided to you, and we hope that it was easily understandable. I did have a phone call with Director Bauman, and we have made one change to the wording of the second paragraph on the first page. We changed a word to optimal. It's from maximum to optimal. Besides that, there have been no other changes to the material before you. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments by the board?
Well, quick comment, Director Stovall. The Finance and Audit Committee did review these changes and adjustments. And in regards to there is no financial impact. It's really a significant amount of cleanup and ensuring that the document aligns with kind of what we need to do as an agency as we move forward with our investments.
Any other comments? Director Stovall, would you like? I'm sorry.
I'll just, since Dee referenced my conversation with her, and since there was a change to the document yesterday, and that was just changing a minor change on the first the first page about defining cash management, and saying it formally said cash management is ensuring maximum cash availability, but it's been changed to ensuring optimal cash availability. And that's it.
It's like a good change. Well, with that change then, is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 20-09-37?
So moved.
I have a motion by Director Stovall. Is there a second?
Second. Sorry.
Linda.
Okay. Was that Linda I heard?
You can choose whoever you'd like, Lori or Linda.
Okay. I'll let Kimberly figure out who buzzed in first on that one. All right.
It's a setup. Good job.
All right. So we do have a motion and on the table. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, hearing none, all those then in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-09-37 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the last resolution, which is Resolution 20-09-38, which is revising TriMet's defined contribution plan for its union represented and management and staff employees to reflect CARES Act amendments. Mr. General Manager, or Dee?
Yeah, just a couple of comments for me on this one, and Dee may have others. So this is intended to ease restrictions on the employee's use of funds from retirement plans. It also eases distribution requirements. For some employees who are affected by COVID-19, the Act allowed up to 1 year delay in the repayment of the plan loans. This resolution incorporates those changes into TriMet's defined contribution retirement plans for union employees and management. So I would comment also that these changes do not have an impact on our operating budget, and your approval is recommended.
Dee, did you have anything else to add?
We just note that there are several changes besides the one that General Manager Kelsey noted. They're all related to making the plan's assets more accessible to people who are suffering through coronavirus-related distributions. And so there's an array of them, and all 5 of them are listed on the second page of the cover memo attached to the report.
Good. Questions by the board? I'm seeing none. Then is there a motion to approve resolution 20-09-38?
So moved. Linda.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Travis.
All right. Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on this item, which seems like a fairly great opportunity to make changes to possibly benefit our employees? So it seems like a win-win all around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So are any other questions? All right, hearing none then, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution 20-09-38, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, then the motion is approved unanimously. I'm looking at our agenda. There are no ordinances, and I know of nothing else that needs to come before the board this morning. How about the rest of the board? I'm hearing none. I will point out again our meeting on Friday. I have been told you'll see an agenda coming out this afternoon after the board meeting, so we can be ready for that. But this is again a follow-up from our previous discussions about working together and issues that we need to work on together as a board. There's no brief, so again, unless there's anything additional coming up, I'm going to adjourn the business meeting. It's adjourned. There's no briefing agenda. I think we had that in the general manager's report today. And what you see below are the 2 special meetings. The September 25th, you'll get that agenda shortly. And then the September 30th, where we'll be talking about the business plan and strategic priorities. And you'll see that information, it sounds like, by about Saturday, if that's what I remember the discussion. I'm seeing a general manager nodding his head.
Correct.
So that's it, board. Is there anything else? All right. Thank you all for hanging in there. A good meeting. I think technology worked about as well as it could be. So appreciate it. I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a great day, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Much.